Hey everyone, Brian Zane here with my review of AEW's Double or Nothing pay-per-view. The show just wrapped up. It is kind of late tonight, so I do want to try and get this review done as soon as possible so I can get it done, recorded quickly, edited quickly, and out to you quickly. And speaking of getting this over with, the show opens up with MJF versus Wardlow, getting all the controversy out of the way from the get-go. Of course, the big story that was swirling throughout the wrestling world for the 24 hours or so prior to the show was MJF's whereabouts. What's his status for the show? Because he didn't go to the meet and greet he was supposed to be at for the Fan Fest, wasn't communicating on the phone allegedly. He apparently bought a ticket, or someone had bought a ticket out of Las Vegas for MJF. Was he going to get on the plane? That was the big storyline, the big hook going into this thing. It was just, what was the status? Is this a work? Is it a shoot? That sort of thing. God, so this was the story of this entire weekend. It wasn't even so much like, is Wardlow going to beat MJF? It was, is MJF going to show up at all? And is this part of a greater storyline, or is this another kind of worker-promoter relationship rift, kind of like what we saw with Sasha Banks and Naomi the previous week or so? A lot of intrigue surrounding this thing. I will say MJF has done a great job over the last several years blurring those lines between what's a shoot, what's a work. He's done such a great job kind of balancing that you never really know how much of what he does is in character. And the story with the conflict between he and Tony Khan over the contract stuff, how much of that was something that was real that became, hey, let's turn this into a storyline, and hey, let's kind of bounce this back and make it seem just more drama to throw into the show. It's crazy how much of what we've seen in the last 24 hours or so, or for the last couple months when this first story broke, how much of that is a shoot, how much of it's a work. Only God, Tony Khan, and MJF know the answer to that. It doesn't seem like something MJF would do on his own, or especially as a work, because I think a work requires two parties to be in on it. So if MJF's going rogue, then it's not really a work. So yeah, no idea what percentage of all this is shoot or work, or if it started out as one thing, it became something else. But I will say, if this is for real, and if this is legitimately part of some conflict between MJF and Tony Khan, and this is just a big power play he was trying to do, then I'll say the same for MJF, what I said about Sasha and Naomi, is that a professional knows their worth. And even if outsiders or people who aren't in the circle of that may not agree with what the perceived worth is, I think in wrestling, when you're your own biggest advocate, it's all about knowing your worth and fighting for that at times when you feel it necessary. And so, yeah, even though it was a stressful story, and if worst case scenario it would have meant that Wardlow wouldn't have gotten his moment, that would have sucked. But again, I think it's the wrestler's right to fight for themselves in matters of booking or money and stuff like that, regardless of it. I'll say that again about Ultimate Warrior, Hulk Hogan, Shawn Michaels, all these different people who famously used politics or whatever. I will defend their right to do that, even if I don't always agree with that stance. But anyway, enough rambling about that. Let's get on to the match itself. It's a big glorified squash match. Not much to talk about here. MJF doing everything in his power to get away from a War Dog. He's running in and out of the ring. He's biting him. He's raking the eyes and everything. I do love that there's some chants here. There's a "he showed up" chant from the crowd. There's a "fuck you MJF" chant as well. MJF pretends to be hurt. He goes to grab the dynamite ring, but Bryce Remsburg's right on top of that shit. He just takes it off his hand, and the end is near here. Wardlow with 5 straight power bombs, puts the foot on the chest, but he's not done. He hits 5 more power bombs on top of that, each one getting progressively scary to watch, because the first 2 power bombs MJF takes clean as a whistle. His arms come down flat with the back like that, and then for the remaining 7 or 8, it's like elbows come down way first, like he's trying to stop something. So it's kind of scary, but Wardlow power bombs MJF into obligatory, as Shane Douglas might say, and he pins to win, and Wardlow has earned his freedom. He's done with MJF, and he is now officially all elite, and it's just a great announcement and a great ovation and response by the fans here as a result of what happened there. I'm going to give it 3 stars out of 5. It's a great story. Not much of a match if you're going for move or whatever, but it was still a terrific story. I think it ended exactly the way it should have gone. Even if that whole stuff with MJF leading into the show wasn't prevalent or didn't exist at all, this is how the story should have ended. Just Wardlow mowing through MJF after everything that he had put him through. It was poetic, and it was just, again, brilliant storytelling, a great way to cap off a very well done story arc between MJF and Wardlow. As for what's going to happen now with MJF, what's this all mean? All this drama we saw here going into it. Is this the end of MJF? Is he going to be just written off? Is he fired? Is he going to take time out? Is he taking a break? What does any of that mean? Or is he going to stick around and come back in a couple, several weeks, licking his wounds and going to the next storyline as if nothing happened? There's so many ways this could go. Whether it was a shoot or a work, MJF has obviously created more buzz around himself, and I think he also created some buzz around Double or Nothing as well because of the question of whether or not he was going to show up. But I think that, MJF did the right thing here, he did the job as perfectly as you could possibly do for someone like Wardlow. Who knows what this is going to end up as. Again, we won't know for sure until he's in one ring or the other, essentially. Up next, Elite versus Delete. It's the Young Bucks versus the Hardys. Before I say anything, yes, I did see the bit on Rampage where the Young Bucks did the actual Hardy Boy cosplay, complete with Brandon Cutler as Lita and the real Gangrel as Gangrel. That was awesome. Caprice Coleman's back in the booth for this one. They do bring up the history that the Bucks and the Hardys have in ROH. They went 1-1 between two matches. Early on, Brandon Cutler getting a chant for no reason. He gets slapped in the face for that. The Bucks take over after a couple of well-timed kicks. They block the poetry in motion. Nick Jackson later on working over Jeff, going for Whisper in the Wind. He misses. Jeff then goes for Whisper in the Wind, slips, regains his composure, then hits the move. That's kind of the story of Jeff in this match. Off is a good way to describe how he was in this thing. There were a couple of botches here and there from him and a couple of scary looking moments where you could tell he's not the same spring chicken that he was even a few weeks ago against Darby Allin. Turns out when you just go 100 miles an hour every week since you've been at AEW doing crazy ass table and ladder spots, there's going to be cumulative damages. Nick Jackson accidentally taking Cutler out on the outside. The Hardys with some big moves before they all lay out. Jeff with a top rope jawbreaker. I don't think I've ever seen that move done before that way. That was pretty cool. He whiffs the swanton. They hit him with the twist of fate and a swanton of their own, but Jeff's able to kick out. There's a super kick party to the Hardys. We get this elaborate setup with some steel stairs that gets broken up. Jeff hits a swanton onto Nick on the steps. Matt with a twist of fate, but Matt kicks out. Another twist of fate. Then Jeff with his 8th swanton bump of the night for him and Matt to win the match here. So Delete ends up beating the Elite. I will give it 3.5 stars out of 5. Like I said, Jeff was not at his best in this thing, but I think the other three guys did a lot of the heavy lifting and made up for it. He still had some great close calls, some great story here with these two teams. I did enjoy the match a lot, but please, Jeff, just slow down. Take a little break if you can. We see a video from the Ass Claimed. They're partying in Vegas. Then we jump ahead to the end of the video where Billy Gunn is looking at all 4 of the boys who are totally wasted in the hotel room. Then we move on to the TBS Championship match as Jade Cargill defends against Anna Jay. This match was it was all over the place, I think, in terms of speed and what we saw here. Kind of a choppy start in this thing where I felt they were just going back and forth with, okay, here's the spot we're going to do next. Here's this slam. Here's this thing where I'm the base and I'm going to pick you up. And it just seemed very much here are the spots that are in the sequence that we've practiced very diligently here. But then once things slowed down, it just felt a lot more natural and it felt just better. I think the first part of the match was a little hard to watch at times. There are some moments throughout, though, where it looks like Jade's just hurt for real. Anna Jay with a big comeback and just this big attack, and Jade doesn't even bump for it. It looks kind of awkward. Then Anna Jay goes up top, and I don't know if it was supposed to be a blockbuster or a sunset flip, but it did not look good. Didn't look pretty at all here. Then you got Red Velvet and Kiera Hogan with a run-in, and they're taken out pretty easily by Anna Jay. Mark Sterling, who we saw the buyout getting beat up by Hookhausen earlier, he shows up with a crutch. He brings it into the ring, but Anna Jay uses it instead. We get a 2 count. Then John Silver shows up. He hits a brainbuster on Mark on the outside. I saw the visual of him doing that while the baddies are just in the background going, no! Anna Jay gets the Queen Slayer locked in, but Jade fights out of it. Fight on the top rope, and Stokely Hathaway, the former Malcolm Bivens, arrives in AEW. Anna Jay looks to be distracted. Jade hits a top rope Jaded to win the match and retain. Then after the match, Chris Statlander shows up to defend her friend Anna Jay. Then Athena shows up. The former Ember Moon appears in AEW. The heels powder, Stokely among them, and that's the end of the segment there. I give this match 2.5 stars out of 5. The match had some truly scary moments, but there was enough good drama in the match, some good storytelling, I think, to make up for it. And then, of course, the 1-2 combination of Stokely Hathaway and Athena debuting in this segment here, I think, helped elevate the whole bit. I'm a big fan of Stokely Hathaway. I liked him in the Indies. I liked him in NXT. And, I mean, the promos he's going to cut for a lot of people, man or woman, in AEW. I think there's a lot of great potential there. He's an amazing talker. And Athena, awesome wrestler, awesome performer. Should be a great addition for the roster of the women's division. Up next, the House of Black take on Death Triangle, and the most adorable moment of the night happens when Penta's son comes out in full gear with the rest of the Death Triangle. That was awesome. By the way, the face paint that the HOB members are sporting on this night is just some great stuff. I mean, Buddy Matthews looks almost unrecognizable with the death metal face paint he's sporting here. Some great physical spots in this matchup. Like, that's one great word to describe it. You know, sometimes when you hear the word physical to describe a match, it's not used in the best context, but I mean that in the best, most positive way here, because these guys just lit each other up. So physical, so hard hitting, so explosive, big slams and kicks and flips and dips. They're all here, man. I think these two teams work really well together, and they're really putting over how big and intimidating Brody King is as well for House of Black. You know, at one point, all three members of Death Triangle hit him at once, and they all three cover him, and he still kicks out. Then we get this whole big sequence where everyone gets their diving spots down on the outside. Finally, Brody goes out last, but he goes a little short because the top of his back just slams into the apron really hard. That looked really scary. Then we get one of my favorite spots just in all of wrestling later on is the part where there's the close call, there's the pinfall and everything. Oh, but everyone gets pushed into the pile at the last second. Like, you can even see them like getting ready to jump back into it. Like, come on, I'm so sick of that spot. It's bad enough. I'm pretty sure we saw that at least once or twice this week alone across all the different companies. Penta with an insane destroyer off Phoenix's back and onto Matthews on the apron. The Lucha's Waste King on the outside. It's 3-on-1, but somehow Malachi Black is able to fend off all of them pretty much single-handedly here. Alex Abrahantes with the distraction. That allows Pac to hit the low blow. He goes up top, but then there's a blackout. The lights come up, and it's Julia Hart. She sprays the black mist into Pac's face, the black mask to Pac, and House of Black wins with their new member. 4 stars out of 5 for this one for me, and again, physical in the best possible way. That match was so fun. I was hopping up and down at some points of this thing. Some of these spots really got me. And boy, how wrong was I earlier in the predictions video about how this thing would end up. Probably won't see anything involving Julia Hart in this one. Yep, sure enough, this was the time where Julia Hart gets involved in the storyline, and she's officially part of the House of Black. And, you know, it's been a long time coming. There's been that tease, and then we finally see the payoff here, or the trigger has been pulled. And so, yeah, I'm excited to see where this goes. There are some very similar vibes to, like, okay, the Judgment Day in WWE just had Rhea Ripley. Well, here's our equivalent. It is Julia Hart joining the House of Black. And I think that it's fair to make those comparisons because they are both kind of like dark, and here's the new lady who's been added to it. But I mean, these are different enough groups that I don't think that's kind of where the similarities begin and end. Again, I'm excited to see what lies ahead for Julia Hart. This is her first real big, you know, character development in a long time. And so now that she's taken on this darker edge, we'll see what happens. It's time for the Owen Hart Foundation Tournament Finals, beginning with the men's match, Adam Cole Bebe taking on Samoa Joe. And by the way, check out the Hart-inspired gear for Cole in this matchup. And Mike Chioda is the referee here. I love this call by Jim Ross. Confidentially, he went to the Eagles concert on Saturday. Some good back and forth early on in this matchup. On the outside, Joe goes for his running boot, but Cole cuts him off and drives him shoulder first into the apron. That's why the story of this matchup here is Cole working over Joe's shoulder, and Cole's got a hurt wing himself here. The poorly disguised shoulder, as JR puts it here, runs into the corner as Cole, but he runs into the Uranagi, not the STO, as Excalibur said on commentary. Joe with that snap power slam, but you can see he's kind of tending to his shoulder, continues to hurt him. Joe with a ridiculous lariat. Cole bounces back though, locks in a crossface, but there's a rope break. Joe with the power bomb into the STF, another break. Then Bobby Fish shows up and he attacks Joe's arm. Joe with the clutch locked in, but Fish interferes again. A couple of big super kicks, lower in the boom, the cover, and the win. Adam Cole is your inaugural Owen Hart men's tournament winner. I give it 4 stars out of 5. It was a fine match. These two worked really well against each other, some great chemistry there. But I just feel weird about seeing a heel cheat to win a tournament that's in honor of a beloved dead wrestler. It just seems weird and kind of counterproductive to the whole drive, the whole mission of the tournament, it would seem. But I don't know, maybe it's just me. Then on to the women's match. You've got Dr. Britt Baker taking on Ruby Soho in that tournament finals, and each woman has their own special tribute to Owen in their wrestling gear. Of course, Britt's got the pink and white gear to match Adam Cole, and then you got Ruby Soho with the back of her jacket saying it's time for a change in the style of that Owen Hart shirt that I'm pretty sure they never actually sold anywhere, but he definitely wore it on TV, so that was really cool to see. By the way, you have Rich Ward from Fozzy playing Britt to the ring here, but you really couldn't tell. You couldn't hear his guitar over the actual music, so to me it was just funny to see this visual of like Britt standing very stoically while in the background there's this like middle-aged man just kind of hipping and hopping around with his guitar. You can't hear what he's doing though. But not to be outdone, Rancid's on stage to perform Ruby Soho's theme, Ruby Soho, which is a pretty rad moment. That was really cool to see. The match begins and Ruby takes her the first real big bump of the night, which is like a missile drop kick flat back onto the floor on the way out. That looked pretty bad. Back in the ring, Britt is just putting the boots to Ruby and asserting her dominance. Ruby tries to come back, but she has a rib injury that keeps showing up at inopportune times. The two trading strikes into a double down. Ruby has a big comeback, going for another superplex, but she gets shut down, takes the stomp, but she kicks out. Ruby fights the lockjaw, but she's got her mouth wide open. I'm like, close your mouth. That's the first part of the battle right there. She hits the no future, then a not good sharpshooter into the rope break. By the way, that's the second of many sharpshooters you will see tonight on this show. Ruby goes to the victory roll, but Britt counters it and wins. The power couple have each won the respective Owen Hart tournament matches. I give it 3.5 stars out of 5 this one. Again, I thought this was a very solid match. These two worked really well, but again, it's just kind of the way the match and the story was told and booked that I have a bit of a question with, where, on the one hand, I get why Britt and Adam each won the tournament, because hey, they're the power couple, and that's a good story you can build off of with those two. But also with Ruby, the whole story is, oh, she hasn't won the big one, and I hate when they have characters like that who they build up as like, wow, this person's been kind of a loser lately. Maybe they'll turn their luck around. And then they don't win. And they're like, well, then what do you do with them? Like, just wait until the next big story where they can kind of redeem themselves. But I feel like some of the luster's already gone at that point. But then it's kind of a tough balance as well, because I think if Ruby had won, people would say, oh, the WWE person or the former WWE person gets over on the homegrown talent. So really it's kind of a shitty no-win situation in that respect. But yeah, again, the match itself I thought was good. Then after that, Britt and Adam are on stage with Dr. Martha Hart, who delivers a speech and then presents the special championship belts to commemorate the Owen tournament winners and the special Owen Cup. Very pretty belts, very awkward ceremony. It's okay though, they have plenty of time to kill for this show, obviously. 6-person intergender tag as Men of the Year, and a debuting Paige Van Zant takes on Sammy Guevara, Ty Conti, and Frankie Kazarian. Sorry, I couldn't get a lower third graphic made in time. Guevara and his crew, by the way, have stolen some of the belts from American Top Team, who are also the heels, I'm pretty sure. This is a weird storyline, man. By the way, Scorpio Sky's got a brand new gold and purple TNT championship, and I have to say, I agree with the look. Speaking of unique pay-per-view looks, you've got Ty and Sammy coming out as Maleficent and Boy Maleficent? The big story here, well, there's two big stories in this matchup. Kaz and his partners do not get along. He's basically there for the ride, but Ty and Sammy just can't keep their eye on the ball. They're just focused too much on making out, and it's pissing Kaz off. And second of all, that is the big story of Ty and Sammy are just like so into each other. It's costing them pivotal points of the match here. And then we finally get this moment where they spend a long time building up to the women fighting. Then we finally get it, and it's just not great. And again, you got to give Paige Van Zant some leeway because it is her first match. And I guess for her very first match with such pressure and stakes as being live on pay-per-view, it was fine. But then in the middle of this sequence she's got here, she like does this Michinoku driver, which does not look good. And I don't know if it was the angle. I hope the angle just made it look look worse than it actually was, and it wasn't quite as serious. There are a couple moments in this Paige tie sequence here that do not look very good. There's that Michinoku driver, there's about a minute later tie with like a face buster on her knee, but it looks like she takes her own leg out in the process. Sammy and Ty keep making out, Kaz has seen enough, and he briefly abandons his teammates for a little bit, but then he gets back in, he tags himself in, Ty gets in his face, and she's blasted with an accidental super kick for her troubles. Sky with a TKO to Kaz, and American Top Team, or Men of the Year, they win, they get their belts back. Sammy is not allowed to challenge Scorpio for the TNT title ever again. I thought, once again, Paige VanZant, I think, was the main story of this one. She did okay for her first match, but if we're talking about MMA fighters or like crossover athletes getting into wrestling in the last couple of years, I don't think I would put her performance in top tier. I would put that somewhere middle or lower, honestly. Like I said, both women had some scary, avoidable moments in this matchup, and they are really getting over how obnoxious Sammy and Ty are, and I do appreciate how much they lead into it. It's very much like they're trying really hard, and I think it's working because the fans don't like them, but it's just such a big departure from what brought Sammy to the dance, and I don't know. Obviously the crowd doesn't care for it on one level, but I hope that this whole departure and just being the whole lovey-dovey thing in the middle of the match doesn't derail him too much. Well, here's a match that, although it's great, frankly did not need to be on this pay-per-view. Kyle O'Reilly taking on Darby Allin here. The story is that Kyle took out Sting's ankle and Darby is looking for some revenge. Kyle with the first real strike of the match, the big knee to the mush, he gets his offense in for a while, but Darby fights back. Darby doing some kind of suicide rolling front kick. I'm not sure if that was entirely intentional, but it looked crazy, and it's just one of the many times you see Darby just like totally throw caution to the wind with his body, doing some stuff that even Jeff Hardy in his prime wouldn't have done. Tope is caught mid-air by Kyle with a choke. Kyle with a big old ankle lock, but Darby counters into another sharpshooter-like maneuver. Man, I've seen a lot of shitty sharpshooters tonight. There's a rope break. Darby tying Kyle up in the ropes, does a damn coffin drop onto him into the outside. Kyle catching a second coffin drop in the ring. Later, Kyle takes Darby's necklace, wraps it around his mouth, and pulls back. Blah. Kyle with some big kicks, the diving knee drop to win. I give it 4 stars out of 5. This was a great match. It was very exciting, and these guys worked really well together. And I think also the shock of Kyle winning was a big one for me. But my whole thing, again, is this match did not need to be on this show. The card was stacked enough as it is, and I get putting a star like Darby Allin on the card. You got to have him on the show involved with something, but it just, I don't know. It's a show with a lot of matches. And that's one of the big takeaways of this show. There's too much of it. And I think Darby and Kyle getting added and the 6-person tag, the intergender thing we saw, I think that was just kind of like 2 of the parts where it's like, okay, I think you could have cut those, it would have been fine. Women's Championship on the line as Thunder Rosa defends against the Professor, Serena Deeb. And this one was just a great, fun technical matchup. There were counters upon counters, holds upon holds. There's the pendulum by Thunder at one point. She even channels Dustin Rhodes for a bit. Deeb with a neck breaker over the middle rope and she takes over, bending Thunder backwards over the back of the corner at one point. 2 exchange strikes, Thunder coming back, trading arm holds, and Deeb gets a nice octopus hold locked in. More holds and counters. We finally get a double down. There's a figure 4. They're trading slaps together. Then they both roll out of the ring while still in the figure 4, which is a pretty scary looking move. Serena gets the cloverleaf and we get a rope break. Thunder ends up coming back, hits a superplex, the Fire Thunder driver. Thunder Rosa wins and retains the championship. I'm going to give it 4.5 stars out of 5. This is one of my favorite matches of the evening. It's kind of up there with 1 or 2 others as far as the match, but this one definitely was the best at that point in the evening. This was a great clinic. If you like your technical wrestling with some hard-hitting stuff thrown in, then this match is probably going to be your jam. These two just really had great chemistry, and I liked what they did in the ring here. Big statement win for Thunder Rosa, too, because not everyone is looking at her reign right now the most positive manner. Hasn't had too many defenses, but this is a big one for her, and I think it's going to help further legitimize her reign for sure. Well, as Justin Roberts so astutely put it before the match, ladies and gentlemen, the shit's about to hit the fan. It's anarchy in the arena as the Jericho Appreciation Society take on the Blackpool Combat Club and friends. Jericho's group is dressed to kill with their matching all-white outfits, as boy band outfits, as it was described on commentary here. The good guys come out to Wild Thing. The brawl begins in the crowd and everything, and the music just keeps playing, like New Jack style. It actually plays all the way through while they're all still fighting. fades out, starts up again, and the crowd pops for it. It was great to see that moment there. Matt Menard already bleeding profusely as this fight's going on. Jericho and Moxley, and a moment that I'm sure Moxley probably shut down or wanted to shoot down, and then finally acquiesced to it, and was probably feeling really validated as a result of this. He and Jericho are fighting near one of those like scooters they have it by the door at grocery stores. They get into one of these things, and like Jericho tries to ride off in it, but Moxley stops him. He gets in it, and he's gonna ride with Jericho in it. You can see Jericho like trying to handle the controls himself, but it's not budging, not moving. Total womp womp move, and I was dying from that. Then later on, Jericho actually kills the sound. He cuts off the Wild Thing music, and it gets a nice negative reaction. But yeah, you've got a lot of stuff going on here. Santana with a blockbuster to Hager through the tables. Kingston and Menard just brawl their way through the concession stand. Danielson fighting Angelo Parker behind the hard cam. Garcia at one point pile driving Ortiz, leaping from the apron onto the steps. That looked gnarly. Jericho suplexes Moxley into a row of chairs. Moxley throws a cooler at him. Garcia drags Kingston by the neck with a belt up a concession. Holy shit. Jericho puts on the walls on Moxley on the timekeeper's table, but it breaks. Kingston and Garcia are eaten up by a freight elevator, so we don't see them for a while. Everyone else makes their way back to the ring. Moxley is undoing the top rope. He uses the bolt to attack Jericho in the crotch. On the outside, Santana and Ortiz do a double dive off the ladder through tables. Moxley brings out a barbed wire board. The four former WWE workers are left in the ring as Moxley and Danielson take on Jericho and Hager, get the double submission. But Jesus, that horrifying visual of Eddie Kingston covered in blood and dirt making his way to the ring with a gas can. What the hell's going on here? He wants to light Jericho on fire, but Moxley and Danielson stop him. Jericho blasts them all with chairs, knocks Mox into the barbed wire. Judas effect on Kingston. We're down to Danielson and Jericho. Danielson looks like a total badass with that bloody tank top. Hager bats Danielson's knee. Jericho puts in the walls into a single leg as Hager chokes Danielson with the rope. The referee stops the match, and the Jericho Appreciation Society win. This one gets 4.5 stars out of 5 for me. This was an insane brawl. This is one of the best, just wild, bloody, no DQ multi-mans I've ever seen. We didn't get it wasn't Stadium Stampede. It wasn't totally off the wall like that. Like I predicted, we were going to get a couple of comedy spots peppered in. They didn't really work, just in execution. The fact that the scooter didn't move, the timekeeper's table collapsing before Jericho could even get the move locked in later on. There was some wild-ass stuff throughout the whole thing. It was like there was some funny stuff, there was some crazy action-packed, there was terror, there was a legit terror and fear as this match went on. Lots of blood, an absolutely bonkers finish involving Kingston with the gas can and the choke spot at the end with Danielson. This was violent, it was brutal. It was a Pier 6 brawl with a dash of humor thrown in. And, honestly, the only reason I didn't give it the full 5-star treatment was because that scooter spot didn't work. We get a video of Andrade with his assistant, Jose. He talks about he didn't come here to lose, and he's tired of his loser stablemates in the AFO. He's bringing in a new business partner, a real winner, and it's Rush, the former ROH World Heavyweight Champion. They do a bit of a Los Ingobernables salute to each other there, and that's where the segment ends. I'm a big fan of Rush's work, and I love to see just how he does in AEW, or maybe this is building to some kind of Forbidden Door kind of thing. Maybe get Los Ingobernables involved because there's still LIJ, obviously, and there's all the affiliates in America and Mexico. So what's that going to lead to maybe? Then we get an interview with Men of the Year, and they're feeling great. Scorpio Sky wants to know who's next, and Dante Martin steps up to him. Sky tells him to meet him in SoCal this week on Dynamite, and they'll meet him there for a championship match. Triple threat match for the AEW tag titles up next as Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus defend against Swerve Strickland and Keith Lee, and Powerhouse Hobbs and Ricky Starks. I do appreciate that everyone in the match went with very bright, vibrant colors in their gear tonight. The champs start out hot with a double moonsault to the outside. Lee and Swerve beating up Hobbs for a minute. Jungle Boy with some consecutive dives, but the last one he's caught midair by Lee and powerbombed onto Luchasaurus. Starks doing a great bit where he does kind of a strut on the top rope, and then he gets crotched, and JR says, which makes him look like an idiot. Starks takes a nasty fall on the outside a few minutes later, though, and that looks pretty scary. Then Keith Lee with the, oh my God, Swerve springboards off of Lee's chest into a moonsault on the outside. Luchasaurus making a big comeback. We get the big Hoss face-off. Lee and Hobbs with the double choke slam. Then Lee suplexing Hobbs to the outside of the ring. Then Lee with a ridiculous plancha to the outside. He clears the apron, makes Taz even say, holy shnikes. Starks tries to win dirty, but Christian Cage intervenes. Hobbs throwing him into the steps. Luchasaurus accidentally kicking JB in the mush. Swerve in their glory, but Hobbs makes the save. Starks decks Lee with the FTW title, goes in for Jungle Boy. Cage yoinks him out, which gets him booed, I think. Swerve's hit with the Jurassic Express for Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus to win and retain. Christian putting Jungle Boy on his shoulders, which makes Luchasaurus look mad confused. I give it 4 stars out of 5. An excellent triple threat match here. And honestly, I think the biggest surprise for me was the champs retaining. I did not expect that to happen here, but I think all 6 guys had a great chance to get some time to shine, and it was every bit as fun and athletic as I thought it'd be. And just seeing, the stuff that Keith Lee was doing, not only as a base for other people, but also the stuff he was doing on his own was very fun to watch. They're definitely showing more tension here between like Christian Cage and Luchasaurus. Like Christian's kind of butting in and encroaching on Luchasaurus' territory here. Something's going to give sooner or later with these 3 guys, and so we just have to keep our eyes peeled. Well, folks, we made it. It's finally time for the main event for the AEW Championship as Hangman Page defends against CM Punk. Very evenly fought match here, not just in terms of the in-ring work, but also the crowd as well. I mean, for the whole show, this crowd was like split down the middle, or at least was mutually respectful to almost everyone. You'd see like dueling chants for both participants in a lot of the matches here tonight, which was pretty cool to see. But you also saw what we got instead with this main event was the inverse of that, where it's like you saw dueling chants, but also both guys would get booed for a lot of what they did. So at this point, I'm like, what's going on? I'm so just like lost at this point. What's the crowd trying to do here? It was just very weird. The story here is that Hangman is seemingly trying to outshine Punk and trying to beat him at his own game. He gets ready for the buckshot, but Punk sees it coming and knocks him off the apron. Punk and Hangman have a bit of a struggle getting ready for their superplex off the top. They almost slip a couple times. Punk making his comeback. Hangman cuts him off, hits that big moonsault to the outside after his 3rd attempt. Punk catching the buckshot attempt with the best sharpshooter of the whole damn night. Paige appears to have hurt his knee. Punk going for a buckshot, but he trips. Paige goes to the GTS, but can't get it off. Punk tries again, and he still can't land it. Whoops. Paige hitting the last ride and the Deadeye. Punk's ass is totally showing on pay-per-view here. Very close kick out. Oh, it looks like it should have been 3, honestly. Paige the GTS and another kick out. Strikes are exchanged. The match goes to the outside. Paige taunting with the belt. The buckshot attempt is made. Punk catches him, and there's a referee bump. We see the wheels turning in Paige's head. He looks at the belt. He goes to pick it up. Is he going to hit Punk with it? He thinks about it for a while, but ultimately he goes, no, he's not going to do it. Puts the belt down, but that proves to be his undoing because he goes to the buckshot one more time. Punk catches him with the GTS, the 3 count, and Punk wins. CM Punk is the new AEW World Champion, his first world title in 9 years. What a way to close out the show. I give it 4.5 stars out of 5. This match ruled. I think it told a great story. There was great body language and facial expressions, and just the way the story built and ramped up as the match went on was absolutely great. Despite a couple of slippy slips by CM Punk in regard to those buckshots, I think it was a very well executed matchup. Paige remaining noble in defeat by not doing the heel turn, not hitting with the belt. That does give him an out for losing here. I thought Paige had a pretty good run with the belt here. I think people over the last couple of months were disappointed in his run, especially when you compare to how the build was and the chase was. But traditionally, the reign itself is never as good as the chase. And Hangman's run, his chase, was one of the better things I'd seen in the last year or so. And, I thought the reign, not saying it was bad, because I thought the reign was pretty darn good. If you look at his body of work with guys like Danielson and the 2 matches he had with him, the match with Lance Archer, the match with Adam Cole, those are all great matches. matches, and I think those were just really, really good for building his resume as champion. So, and him, I think it was his seventh defense in all of the title, and not a bad way to go out in a match like that, where again it stays kind of ambiguous, it kind of sets you on an interesting creative path. Where's the story of Hangman Page going to take us after he loses the belt, after all that work he did to build his self-confidence up, and where does this go for Punk? This crowd was weird as hell all night, especially for this one. So it's like, is Punk heel now, or like what's that going to lead to? Because the crowd was very appreciative and very happy. You could see the emotion on Punk's face when he won here. So it was a weird thing where both guys got booed, but one guy got booed kind of less, and in the end it was the guy who won the belt. But I mean, it was a very, very, very good, solid main event to close out this show, and I think it definitely lived up to the hype. My grade for this year's Double or Nothing is a B+. The grade was originally going to be a little bit lower, but then after I thought about it and doing more of this recap as I'm going through it, not even the length or the god-awful ridiculous number of matches on this show was enough for me to take it down too much of a peg, especially because you will see a lot of long wrestling matches in your time as a fan, but how many of them are going to have as many good to great matches as this one had? There were some real bangers on this show. I'm still thinking of Anarchy in the Arena playing back in my mind in many different places. It was just all over the place and frenetic, and that finish was felt so intense, and it really made you go, what the hell is happening here? The last three matches, those title matches at the end, everyone brought it, and the six-man with House of Black and Death Triangle was incredible. There was a lot of good here. Yeah, it went a little long. Yeah, I'm a little tired. It's late, but you know what? Tomorrow's a holiday, and it is what it is. This was a very, very strong show by AEW. But what did you think of the show, folks? What were your thoughts on Anarchy in the Arena, or the MJF drama, or CM Punk as the new world champion? I want to hear it in the comment section below. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.